Hi everybody, Kathy Syrick from the Confident Leader Journey here, and welcome. You can find me at confidentleaderjourney.com, on Facebook, Confident Leader Journey page. And what I've decided to do is try and theme the vlogs in a kind of sequence. So one month we'll look at self-awareness, another month we'll look at interacting with others, and the third month we'll look at coaching and leadership skills, that kind of thing. I don't know how that will go, but we're going to give it a try. So this month we're looking at interacting with others. And one of the great tools I find really helpful when I think about interacting with others is understanding where they're coming from. Now, we all know that if you understand where someone's coming from, it's easier to meet them where they are, to understand them, to understand why they're saying what they're saying, why they're behaving the way they're behaving. I suppose the real challenge is, how do we do that? And there are lots of ways. One of the ways we're going to look at today in this video is we're going to look at the ego state that the person is in and how that affects how we interact with them. Now, obviously, whenever we talk about interacting with others, there's a huge amount of self-awareness built into that. So this will be a mix. But let's actually start off by thinking about where ego states and that turn of phrase comes from. Eric Berne was a psychotherapist, and he worked with Freud and understood his approach. He understood Jung's approach, but he felt there was something in not just the deep psyche of people that explained their behavior, but there was also something happening when two people interacted with each other. That there was a pattern that emerged, and that this pattern tended to relate to, if you like, tapes that we lay down early in life. So when we're children, we hear parents and authority figures saying things like, don't touch that, you should have done this, take care of yourself. There's a whole range of things to say. So we hear a lot of what Eric Berne called parental tapes, and we absorb them as a young child, and they become tapes we play in our head. We also have tapes that relate to what we are feeling at the time. So they're kind of internal tapes, whether something feels good, whether something feels bad, whether our behavior is being appreciated or whether we need to manage it in order to feel good. And that would be called the child set of tapes. And then as we get older, initially we just act on the parental tapes we have that tell us how to behave, or we act on our child tapes, our own feelings that tell us how to behave. And then as we get older, we start reaching a stage where we start checking these tapes instead of just accepting them at face value. So we might have a parental tape saying, well, we should have done this, and we'll go, well, should I? Let me check that. And we might interact with other people, we might check it internally against ourselves, and we might start developing our own set of tapes, our own unique set of tapes, and that would be being called the adult. So a way of looking at this is that we have three basic ego states that come from the tapes we're playing. And if you think about this, I'll just share an example. When you think something's gone really wrong for you, so something hasn't gone well at all, initially you'll probably be upset. You might even throw a bit of a tantrum. You'll be quite emotional about it. And it's not fair. So-and-so should have done that. The world's against me and all that kind of stuff. That's very much your child ego state reacting emotionally in a very feeling way to the situation. Most of us would then move on to going, I should have done this and I should have done that. I ought to have done this. And that's our parental tapes playing. Okay. And then we might settle down. We're going, oh, it is what it is. I mean, I think I shared an example where I lost my Facebook account. Someone hacked it and then it was disabled, shut down. And initially I just threw a massive tantrum. It's like, this is ridiculous. How can I run my business? This is awful. It's unfair. And then I went, I should have done two-factor authentication. Then I ended up just a couple of minutes later at, well, I suppose I should be working on LinkedIn anyway because this is a business. And very matter-of-factly moved on. So we go through these three ego states. And they can all be constructive or destructive, and there's a lot more layers to it as well. So, for example, in the parental tapes, we have the critical parent and we have the nurturing parent, the one that says, you should have done this, and the other one who says, oh, don't worry, go and settle down, have a duvet day, look after yourself. Okay. And you can see those are both positive things because, yeah, maybe I should have done that, and that's good advice. I should do a spreadsheet, I should budget. And maybe I should take a day off and do some self-care. But we can also see that they might not always be the best advice in a given situation. And the child has two different aspects to it. One is called the kind of free child, the adaptive child. You know, the one when you get in the moment and you're playing and you're enjoying and you're totally in the moment, feeling everything. That would be called the free child. And that's the plus side of that. But obviously, if someone then tries to start telling you what to do and they start micromanaging you, you'll probably rebel and throw a tantrum. That's also the free child. And the other side of the child is the compliant or adaptive child, the one who learns to get on with people, the one who learns society's norms and starts taking those in on tapes and starts behaving in a way that's acceptable to society. Obviously, a great strength in human culture. If it goes too far, you end up with someone who's a people pleaser and never knows what they actually want. So you can see that there's nothing inherently good or bad about these things. They're just ego states we go into in different situations. And why does this matter when we're interacting with other people? Because if we are in our adult ego state and we're talking and communicating at that level, and the other person is not in an adult ego state, we're going to be talking at cross purposes. So let's have a think about some of the things people can say which would show that they're in their child ego state. And this happens quite often because quite often if a manager micromanages or goes into the parent ego state, people automatically adopt the child ego state. Eric Berne wrote a great book. The first part of it's quite theoretical, but the second part is all about these games people play that we learn through our life. And they all involve us, one person goes into a parent ego state, the other one goes into a child ego state, and everything runs smoothly because of that. But if we're talking about leadership and confidence, we're talking about having adult to adult interactions, aren't we? Yeah, very much so. So let's think about some of the things that people can say which might indicate to us they're in a child ego state. So it's not my fault, it's not fair, don't want to do it, don't see the point, and the tone in which they're said is usually one of the easiest ego states to spot. Okay. Now, generally, a child state will tend to internalize things. Okay. And it's all about feelings. Now, if we look at the parent ego state, someone in a parent ego state will use the words like should, must, ought, and will either be very judgmental or maybe overly nurturing. Oh, you don't need to do that now. Don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out when in fact a bit of stress might be good. So when you meet someone who's really laid back, inexplicably so, and says, oh, I don't really need to bother about that, that could be the rebellious child, or it could be the nurturing parent saying, oh, I don't need to do that yet. So asking a few questions to find out would help. Now, what do we do about this? Well, if we identify that the person we're talking to is not in an adult ego state, and we're trying to solve a problem, and usually it's fairly obvious when they're not in an adult state because they don't focus on the problem. They focus on everything except the problem. So let's say, for example, you're in a restaurant and you're getting bad service. They'll start blaming the waiter or blaming the chef or blaming themselves for going there. Well, in fact, all we actually need to do is go, excuse me, could we have better service and have a conversation with someone? If you've got a business problem, they're the ones who'll be so busy casting blame or taking too much responsibility and getting upset and emotional about it, when actually you need to all sit down and brainstorm a solution and get on with solving the issue. How do you get people into an adult state? Well, this is a big one because it really depends how attached they are to the non-adult ego state. But generally in the workplace, because work is such a strong situation where we're expected to act as adults, unless there's some toxicity in the working relationships there, it's a lot easier in the work environment to bring people back to the adult state. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we can prime them, and I think I've mentioned priming before, by referring and reminding them of a time when they were in the adult ego state and things went well. So, do you know, last week when we had that meeting about such and such, I was really impressed with the way you just kept calm and you know got everybody's ideas on the table, and I think that led to a really good decision. So we're giving them a positive stroke for the adult ego state, and it tends to put them into that. And then staying task focused and not letting any judgment or personal stuff come into your conversation will help them maintain the adult ego state. Well, I'm sure you realize that this is a massive subject. And in fact, if you're interested in learning more about this, you can join the Confident Leader Journey program, because transaction analysis is one of the things we look at as a part of that in terms of self-awareness, interacting with others, and becoming coaches and good leaders. Equally, it is the topic of one of my monthly webinars. I hold a free webinar every month. So keep your eyes open for when that comes up, because it should be coming up quite soon. All right then, I hope this has been useful to you. And don't forget, check out theconfidentleaderjourney.com and the Confident Leader Journey page on Facebook. Thank you.